Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where each Tuesday, your host, Rick Sayes, gathers around the mic with outdoor industry entrepreneurs, brand leaders, founders, and enthusiasts to share stories from the backcountry, the startup files, and the retail aisles. Rick's guests offer actionable advice to land your ideal industry gig, grow your outdoor career, or plan your next big adventure. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And now, here's Rick.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This week on episode 337, OrthoLites' newest footwear technology, Cirql, has been making waves in the industry. Cirql technology is aimed at helping usher the footwear industry towards a more sustainable and environmentally sound future. And newly enlisted Chief Brand Officer Kristin Burrows is here to tell us all about it. Welcome to the show, Kristin.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. Now, I always start off with how folks were introduced to the outdoors. How were you introduced to the outdoors?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I wouldn't really say my parents are quote unquote outdoorsy people. They love the outdoors, but it wasn't kind of first and foremost. So I think when I think back, when I was born, my dad was in grad school. My mom was she was pregnant with me when she graduated from college. So I think really given the financial situation, the outdoors quickly, became our playpen. And I can remember, walking/running, to the pool in our complex, biking, hiking,
cool,
walking. So I think, pretty simply put, it was a forced but great necessity.
A third babysitter.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
That's
you
funny.
got it.
Did you guys camp too, or did you just go hiking and biking and all those things?
We've never been big campers. To my regret, I actually think, I don't think of myself as a high maintenance person. But my husband teases me that probably at this point I'd be more into glamping than camping.
Well, as we go through life, we all get our thing. So it is what it is.
I want to be surrounded. Like I actually was just looking at those Airstream vacations where they put the Airstream. So that seems perfect to me. Still in nature, but still in full comfort.
Well, my parents, we camped when we were kids, but then as we got older and they got older, they started renting these cabins. There's a couple places up here in the Eastern Sierra. Rock Creek Lake is the one where they went to. We went to a cabin there every summer. They went to a cabin there every summer for like 30 years. It was, and that way you have the best of both, right? So you go back to your cabin and you have a, proper stove and heat and all those things, but then you can get out and hike and fish and do whatever. So that's an option too.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
There you go. And you've recently joined OrthoLite, right? Tell us about your experience there. And it's a newly created role. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. So the Chief Brand Officer is a newly created role, as you mentioned. It's really interesting. Although, we've been providing comfort, performance, and sustainable footwear solutions to footwear brands for 25 years, we've predominantly been a sales and manufacturing driven company. And so really when we think about, sort of our current inflection point 25 years in, and what's really important for us to drive growth next, it's really time for us to shout from the mountaintop a bit more about how and why we're different, and to continue to separate ourselves from, commodity type products that are out there, and how we can really partner with our brand partners in a way that helps them deliver against their objectives. So really, again, thinking of ourselves as a solution for their comfort needs, their performance needs, and increasingly important, their sustainability needs, and what their management, their board of directors are insisting upon in terms of what they're doing with their product and process to benefit the environment.
Yeah, because probably when OrthoLites started, there weren't as many players in that space as there are today. Like everything, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely not. And our CEO founder, Glenn Barrett, he 25 years ago used recycled rubber, in our insoles. So whether or not that was to be smarter about, leveraging waste
right.
to help costs, But at the end of the day, that's always been a part of our DNA.
Very cool. And how did you get connected with OrthoLite? Did you work there before, or I'm sure you had contacts there for sure?
No, I mean, the whole thing is a little bit of a funny story. So I became connected to OrthoLite through an executive recruiter, a gentleman by the name of Ken Snyder. I used to work for his wife when I was president of KEDS, and when the opportunity came up, like any good man, right? He discussed it with his wife, and she thought of me. So
cool.
Really, that's how it all happened. But the really interesting thing is, and although I live in New York, outside of New York in Scarsdale, the company is based in Amherst, Massachusetts. And the twist of all twists, I grew up in Amherst, Mass. And Glenn, the CEO, actually knows my mom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So whenever I come to the Amherst office, I stay with my parents. I stay in my room that I grew up with.
Wow, that's cool.
Yep. Surrounded by my yearbooks, my rainbow and unicorn sticker still on my window. Yeah.
That's awesome. And do you still have friends that you went to school with that live there? High school friends and things?
No. It's I don't know how much you know about Amherst. I mean,
Not much.
It's a small college town.
Okay.
It becomes a big college town when UMass Amherst is in session, but there's actually 5 colleges right around this area. So,
gotcha.
So most people once they kind of go through the high school leave, just because there's not a lot of opportunity here outside of education.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And now you're working with Cirql. Now Cirql is a new initiative, right? That sounds pretty exciting. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I think, if we take a step back first, when we think about sustainability, I tend to think of it on a little bit of a spectrum, right? There's no, there's sort of grades of possibility. And I think that we have to shout out and congratulate companies, people, et cetera, for wherever they are on that spectrum. When I say on one end of the spectrum is, am I recycling things? Am I composting my food, et cetera? On the other end of the spectrum really is, am I building product or leveraging processes where the product that I'm building can actually return back into soil? Because you say that even though recycling is a step forward and is positive, at the end of the day, there's only so many recycled benches that you can make out there. That the sort of North Star would be on that right side of the spectrum of, can we build something that actually can compost and go back to turn into soil to become something else again? And so although we've, as I mentioned earlier, have a long history of leveraging recycled products into our products and being very focused on waste, the carbon footprint, et cetera, through our process, to us, that North Star of being truly circular and actually creating a product that can be composted, back into the ground, is the penultimate. And so that's
great.
That's what Cirql is. Yeah.
And so that's your goal, or that's what you're doing now? Are you striving to get there, or you guys, Cirql is already there?
So we have not launched in market yet. We plan to have the first product in market in 2023. But we have through our various partners developed a midsole product that can be composted back into soil.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for you.
Which is great. Yeah. Now the key is, of course, as part of this, we also need to be able to provide the customer, once they buy this product, with a way to get it back to a place that can break it down and compost it. So that's the other leg of the stool that we're working on. You imagine a world where you're done with your shoes, instead of putting it in a bag for Goodwill, you're putting it in a bag on your front step, and it's getting to a place that it can be ripped apart and broken down and returned again back to, ideally back to soil or recycled into something else.
Right. That's huge, because you do have to complete that circle, right? I mean, all the things that whether it's food waste or whatever, we try to do our best, but we're just, we do our end of it and you drop it off, and then you wonder, okay, where the hell does that go? Does it really get recycled? What happens?
Yeah, no, 100%. You can't just have the product with the potential to do
right.
something,
It's capable
right?
of.
You want to complete it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
So now you've been a product line manager, now a chief marketing officer. That's a great, interesting career path. I think a lot of folks follow that path possibly. Do you have 3 learnings that you rely on that you've learned over the years now that you're at the top of the chain, so to speak? Something that you still when you're in meetings and so forth, something that still comes up when you were a product line manager. Yeah, we need to XYZ, or I remember, that kind of thing.
Well, I hope that as I've gotten older, I've gotten smarter, because really what's the benefit of getting older, right?
Well, sometimes age has nothing to do with it, because you can get smarter at a younger age too.
That is a very good point. So I'm just trying to rationalize as as my body can't ski quite as well as it used to, or long as it used to. So I think, first of all, really listening and hearing what your customers are saying. So instead of believing kind of what you think is correct, and sort of taking yourself out of that and focusing on what problem are you really trying to solve for them, and what are they telling you in terms of the problems they're looking for you to solve. So that's what I would say is number one. I think number 2 is, instead of having the right answers, is really focusing on asking the right questions. And I'm still working on this, but I try to always take the time to figure out, what is the right question to ask? What's the right way to frame that question? And what's the right way to ask that? What's the right tone of voice to ask that question? Because I think that's very important. And then I would say lastly, and this one did take me a while, and I can remember days at Adidas as a PLM where I would always feel like I had to have the right answers, and that it was, that it wasn't okay that I didn't know something. And so my third piece would be, don't feel like you have to have the right answers. Again, it goes back to number 2, right? Figure out how to ask the right questions.
Yeah, that's perfect too, because I was going to ask on the number 2, when you want to ask the right questions, I think it's crucial that you rely on a group to get to the right question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what you talked about number 3 just makes total sense. You have to, surround yourself, or hopefully you're on a team with other smart people, and just start throwing everything at the board, and then you'll get to where you go eventually. Right.
And if you're not surrounded by the right people, go find them.
That's true too.
For that particular area.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What are a couple of accomplishments you're most proud of in your work history, or maybe with what you're doing now at OrthoLite?
Well, I think ultimately my biggest accomplishment hopefully will be and needs to be raising 3 boys to become great men. But outside of
that'd be a huge one. Good on you. That's good.
Yeah. That's a big one.
Much needed today too.
I'm going straight to heaven if that happens. There's no yellow light.
Yeah.
But there luckily have been many moments in my career where I felt like, I really earned that glass or 2 of wine, and that I really made a difference and created value and solved problems. So, I think, having said that some of my most proud moments are actually when I fell down in my career and made career mistakes and learned how to pick myself up, and become, better because of it. So, I think of one instance when I was running footwear and apparel for Fila, and I had just come off of a great career experience at Converse where we had worked together as a team to really turn the brand around. And it was a Chuck Taylor was sold in gas stations when I got there. And then, when we left, Nike had purchased the brand, given really the tremendous turnaround of predominantly the Chuck Taylor, and how the Chuck Taylor really represented kind of a convergence of sport and culture and fashion. then I went to Fila where with sort of these, what I felt tailwinds of all these great learnings. And, we made some mistakes in terms of turning that brand around. We launched a sub brand that in retrospect didn't really make any sense. And so that was a big, it fell flat. And we did ultimately sell Fila, which was a good outcome. But I think it's those things, it's those failures where you can say, what can I learn from this? How do I pick myself back up after this? That really, to me, I won't say it's an accomplishment, but the accomplishment is making sure that you turn a crisis into an opportunity.
Well, the accomplishment is learning from that too, right? I mean,
exactly.
That's really, because you're right. You do learn more when you fall down than when you win. I mean, winning is great. We all love it, but you look back on all the wins, like, that was cool, but I really didn't learn a lot because we're just moving forward all the time. Whereas when you trip up, you learn the most.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. Yep.
And so speaking of falling down, have you had any mentors that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, I've been very lucky, especially early on in my career, where typically when I made a job move, it was because somebody from my current company kind of left for a different opportunity and then, took me with them. So I feel in a sense that people were always kind of looking out for me. And I have a few that really stick out. I think, one of them, Peter Moore, who unfortunately recently passed away, is an icon in the athletic footwear space. I mean, he designed the Jordan logo, designed the Jumpman logo. Once he moved over to Adidas, really spearheaded Adidas's turnaround. And he, getting back to some of the things I said earlier, really, really taught me how to sort of frame up a problem to be solved because he was on the creative side, that my design partners would then solve for and have, instead of trying to do their job for them.
Uh-huh. Or try to speak a language that they don't get. They're just not
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And no, don't tell them how to do something, right? Just create that box so that they can then color in that box.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
So yeah, he's definitely one that I'm very grateful and blessed to have had as a mentor.
Any others?
Yeah. I would also say my old boss at Fila, Robert Erb, who was also the general counsel at Adidas when I was there. He really taught me how to think through a good argument and back up what I was saying. And then I would say finally, Greg Rabat, who is now the CEO of Rockport. He was my boss when I was the president of KEDS, and just the diligence and the preparation that we were forced to do at various quarterly business reviews, et cetera, in terms of really understanding the drivers of your business, was a huge and valuable lesson.
That's awesome.
And for all of them, just being good people.
Yeah. Well, that's generally what it starts with, right? They're good humans. Yeah.
Good humans. Yeah. So critical.
Yeah. We're going to take a little break and give some love to our sponsor, TeePublic. Hey, are you a t-shirt fanatic like me? I'm always on the lookout for new t-shirts. I have a collection of tees with funny sayings, inspiring graphics, or just something with a simple message. And I often find them at TeePublic. TeePublic has all kinds of apparel, including outdoor biz tees, hats, and more. Visit ricksays.com/teepublic and find something to add to your tee collection today. I know you have one. That's ricksays.com/teepublic. Now, back to the show. Is there any roles that you've held where you felt like you learned the most, which was just a complete, maybe it was just a total, career experience change for you? You went from being a product line manager to a brand leader. I don't know what it was, but is there anything that you really felt like, man, I really, looking back on it, I learned a ton doing that?
That's a really good question. I think I have learned at every single role what to do and what not to do. I think the learning curve was sort of the steepest earlier in my career.
That makes sense.
Which I think does make sense. I would say that probably my biggest learning overall, because I've worked at jobs where I felt like it was not my best foot forward, or, I was sort of playing up to my highest level. I would say what's so key, in retrospect, I think of your head and your heart have to be aligned. And for me, that means, you have, from the heart perspective, you have to be in a place and in a culture that's a safe place, right? That really allows you to take some risks and allows you to be the best you. And then from a head perspective, it was always really important for me to be in places that challenged me intellectually. And if you have one or the other, it doesn't work.
Right.
And so you really have to figure out how to keep those in alignment.
Yeah, that's a great point. Those things, your head and heart have to be aligned with your values 100%. Otherwise, and the culture values wherever you are. Otherwise, it's a battle. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever said that on the show. That's a good one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit and have a little fun as we move towards the end of this. What outdoor activities do you participate in these days? You still run? Were you a runner?
I still run.
All right,
yep.
Cool, good.
I still run. I still do a lot of walking. I'm a sort of my therapy place is either water skiing or snow skiing. So
okay.
I like water skiing. My parents have a place up in New Hampshire at Lake Sunapee, as does my brother now. And we grew up kind of water skiing, early in the morning when everything is totally flat.
Right.
And still at 50, I'm 52 and my brother's 50. We still
good for you.
A little bit of competitiveness in us.
Yeah.
And I think our biggest challenge always is to do that all the way through Columbus Day without a wetsuit. So still going strong there. And then snow skiing. I mean, just passionate about being on the snow as much as possible. It doesn't happen as much as I would like, given sort of 3 boys and crazy schedules. But
yeah. Do the boys ski? Yeah. They must.
They do. I take them. We have a mom-boy trip every February break. We go out to Alta and ski there for the week.
Do they ski or do they board?
Well, at Alta, you can only ski, so I sort of force them into doing it that way. Yeah,
that's the secret there. I got you.
Exactly. Because I think they would like to board, quite honestly. Right. But right now, as long as I'm paying.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the outdoor biz or grow their career if they're already in?
So I think to get in, I would look at the various companies that you would want to work for and sort of make your selection set, based on that, and then get whatever role you can within that company and learn from there versus, I think it would be harder to do it the other way, to say, I really want to be a product line manager. Where are the product line manager opportunities, at A, B, and C company. So I would try to identify those companies that you want to work for and go in that way.
That's a good point. That's good advice, because you never know. You could start out as a customer service manager and end up as a designer. You never know. So
you never know.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yep.
I like that. Yeah.
Yep.
And do you have any daily routines to keep your sanity? Sounds like you get out and exercise a little bit. Do you meditate?
Yeah, I exercise every day. Mm-hmm. But I would say, one of the biggest things that helped me over the past 3 years is I don't know if you've ever heard of something called the Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he basically looked at quote unquote successful people across a variety of spaces and found sort of 6 things that they had in common that they did in the morning: meditation, exercise, scribing or writing, visualizations, affirmations, and reading. And so the Miracle Morning is actually spending time doing each of those. I have to admit that I sometimes cheat and don't do each of them. But I think just even, taking 5 minutes to breathe,
right,
thinking about how you want to live your day, and what does success look like for that day, and then moving your body is so critical.
That's a good one. I when I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast and some other ones, I think that book was pretty popular at that point in time. And it's interesting how I think if you take that concept a step further, because I'm a big planner and I write things down, I have all kinds of lists. And, this podcast, I have so many workflows related to the podcast that are all jotted down, because I'm getting older and can't remember all the steps, but also just because I think if you plan your work and work your plan, it's all going to turn out well. But if you wing it, then you're going to have trouble. And I think A Miracle Morning and other things that people have written about and do speak to that.
Well, it's such a good point. I think this idea of living intentionally, versus sort of letting things happen to you. How do you go out there and make them happen? Now, granted, we can often only control our response to things.
Life happens. Stuff gets in the way.
Life happens.
Yeah. You step on the shovel in the wrong way every once in a while. I mean, it happens.
That's right. Exactly. But I think to your point, if you don't have a plan, then it's going to take you anywhere. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you have any other favorite books or books you give as gifts?
So that is definitely a favorite book that I recommend. Yeah.
Send everybody stalking at Christmas.
Exactly. Well, and now that my oldest son in particular is a avid lacrosse player, the other book that I'm sort of giving my family is Lacrosse for Dummies.
Okay, cool. That's a good one. Yeah, cool. Being on the West Coast, lacrosse wasn't a thing out here. Well, I played football, which, loved it. Banged up my knees doing it. Wouldn't change it for the world, but in hindsight, probably should have picked baseball, but oh well.
Oh, football is such a better sport, though. I think you picked
Yeah. You learn a lot playing football. Man, it's amazing.
Well, it's just such a team. I think it's a different level of a team sport than baseball.
Yeah, you're more directly dependent on you're still directly dependent on baseball, but you're right. It's just a different engagement. Yeah. How about, what is your favorite outdoor gear purchase under $100?
So that was an interesting one. I have to say,
it's probably the hardest question I ask.
It is a hard one because I don't want to go like Hydro Flask or Yeti tumbler or anything like that. Right. I would probably say it's my Andy. I don't know if you've ever heard of the brand Andy, ANDIE backpack. It's like a little nylon drawstring kind of backpack that I love just because, I can throw anything, I can put my water bottle in it, sunblock, etc., and just, put it on my back and go for a hike or a bike or whatever. And it's comfortable. I feel like it's fashionable. It's washable. So highly recommend it.
Cool. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes. I haven't heard of that. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say or ask of our audience?
Well, one of my questions for the audience is, and we face this in talking to some of our brand partners is, how much is the customer today really willing to pay for sustainability? Are they willing to pay more, or is the expectation is that we have to figure out how to deliver it at the same cost?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, because I think certain customers, certain parts of society are willing to pay more, and others absolutely aren't.
Yeah.
Are you guys finding that when you're in your research?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how would you, when you say certain parts, like what's the profile of somebody who's willing to pay more?
Well, obviously they're more affluent, I think, because they can afford it, first of all.
Yeah.
And I think they just have a different perspective on the world than others. It's more of a global, we're all connected concept than I'm just here and I'm going to get mine and away I go and don't care about anybody else. So
yeah.
It's funny, I just got back I was at the Outdoor Writers Association of America conference last week, a week and a half ago in Wyoming. And I drove from, Bishop to Wyoming. It's just, I'm not into flying these days, and it's a beautiful drive. And I was listening to a book on Sitting Bull. And every time I listen to or read these books about the Native Americans, they just had that whole circle of life nailed. And we still fail to do that in our lives every day. We just kind of look at, we're only here for a short period of time and hustle and bustle and too busy to that, to the other thing. And we just miss so much, and we're not protecting our home, we're destroying it. So.
Yeah. I heard an interesting analogy yesterday, or read it, that if you could only have, if you were told that you could have any car that you want, but you're only going to have one car, you would probably take really good care of that car, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we do that with our bodies, and why don't we do that with the earth?
Yeah, whatever thing it is, right?
Whatever thing
sports equipment, your car, your camera, whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's ingrained in us. It's just it's interesting because it was, listening to this book, it's just amazing how the natives had a completely different perspective on life and the earth than the white folks did that were chasing them. And it's it's wild. But anyway, that's a whole different podcast.
I'll have to read that.
It's a big one. It's a pretty thick book. I mean, I listened. It was a 14-hour drive, and I'm not done with the book yet. So tells you how long it is. But that's the great thing about what we used to call books on tape, and now I guess we've got to call them right. Yeah, Audible. Now we call them Audible.
Audible. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how can listeners follow up with you if they'd like to reach out? What's the best way?
Well, I'd love for anyone to reach out. Please give me some insights in terms of what's going on with them, any questions they have, any thoughts around my question of sustainability. But please reach me at K Burrows. That's KBURROWS as in Sam at ortholite.us.
Perfect. We'll put a link to that in the show notes, and we'll link to OrthoLite in the show notes and Cirql and all the cool things. Well, thanks for coming on. It's been great talking to you.
Rick, it's been great talking to you too. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you at a trade show or somewhere someday.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, take it easy.
Get outside.
Get outside. There you go. That's
Get
it.
outside.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theoutdoorbizpodcast.com, where you'll find show notes with links to everything we talked about and more. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or spread the word and tell a friend about the show. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week. And thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Rick Sayes.